Hello, my name is Christopher Walton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I am the author of Navigating Your Mind, Achieving a Life of Peace, Joy, and Happiness. And I'm also the owner of Christopher L. Walton and Associates here at eastidahotherapy.com.
Hi, my name is Caroline Azzo, and I'm a student at the University of Illinois and a staff member at Christopher Walton and Associates. And welcome to the Navigating Your Mind podcast, where we explore the fascinating world of mental health and all of its implications for our daily lives. Each episode will be conducting interviews involving experts, interesting case studies, and have lively conversations about the effects of living in our changing world and its impact on us. We'll be your guide as we navigate this ever-evolving landscape and discover how a healthy mental can change our relationships for the better. So join us and let's start learning. Today, we are speaking with Maria Raass, a licensed professional counselor whose counseling approach focuses on developing and rebuilding healthy relationships, not only with others, but with ourselves. Hi, Maria. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you all?
Doing good.
Doing well today. Doing well.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what we're going to be speaking on today?
Yes, I think it is very important for us to talk about expectations versus reality regarding couples in the social media realm. I believe that since the pandemic, I think we definitely experienced kind of like a life or death experience where we were honestly, regardless of where we stand with the pandemic, our world literally shut down. We can recall moments where our professions changed. I mean, for us, we went telehealth, right? And then stores were closing. I can recall running out of toilet paper. That was huge.
That was a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. And so imagine how isolating that was for all of us. And so for individuals, that meant I think for some broke up in their relationships during that time, just because of the challenges in regards to like my health versus can I travel around and visit my partner? And that has been huge for a lot of my clients. The other thing too is you had couples who spent a lot of time together, more than usual during that time. Therefore, outcome has been, well, divorce is a lot more present. So I feel like with just online connections and the isolation, it is really important for us to talk about, is our connections that we have with our partners valid? What are we looking for? And honestly, just again, expectations versus reality.
And so with that, Maria, what's been happening since the pandemic has kind of slowed down and people are getting back into normal reality? They don't have to wear masks anymore. We don't have to do all those things. So a couple of years out from the pandemic, what are you seeing with relationships with people in your practice?
Yeah, I'm having more couples coming into therapy, trying to really figure out again, like what is the whole purpose? Are they happy? So figuring out their happy stance in life. Then I have individuals who are having a hard time finding a partner due to that isolation or things haven't really got back to normal. And so that social space is definitely have more increased into more online connection. And so I think that is something that we're still learning how to navigate is online connection. What is the reality of that? And how does that fit our expectations and relationships?
Do you find that there's a lot of people who are starting to switch to pursuing relationships that are online or found through dating apps or anything like that?
I think it's easier. And that's just the valid point. I think there's some that are still experiencing a lot of anxiety from going out and probably socializing. Most people are established in the work field. Same with school. I'm not quite sure if college is back to normal.
Yeah.
But it's a huge impact to just what's our comfort zone.
Yeah, I know for us personally, nothing has ever really gone back to the way it was. Things have gotten less, completely online after COVID, but even still, everything's more of a hybrid than really all back in person. And I guess I asked because personally, I would say probably half of the relationships that I know all come from some sort of online space, whether that be like social media or dating apps or anything like that. Like those have really changed the game.
Right.
And
Yeah. Mhm.
one of the things I've really noticed is that as a therapist, that people are more lonely and disconnected based on the precedence of having to be by ourselves for such a period of time. And then I don't think people are scared about going out like they were for a while, but I think there became somewhat of a habit or
Mhm.
maybe a trend anyway to isolate and stay by yourself. And now everything is available online. And so people don't have to get out and they can do online dating apps and whatever and have quick hookups or whatever, but they're not necessarily in a relationship or looking for more of a satisfactory position. So there's a lot of loneliness out there where people just are feeling sad and disconnected with
Mhm.
anxiety and fear.
Yeah. Right. And again, social media influence. I think there has been a lot more uh, publicizing divorces in celebrities, well-known people, and so that has become maybe more of a norm now. Witnessing a lot of these individuals going through their own divorce, people that
Mhm.
idolize. I mean, we're in that space now that we have our own, what I guess our
Mhm.
own connection with what an idol is to us, and it's all accessible. And so I think that influence, we really need to make sure that, like, hey, are we just following a trend, or are we really advocating for what we want? And
Mhm.
that is just the influence of social media.
Yeah. I find it interesting that you bring up divorce because I know even before the pandemic, I want to say there was like a very high divorce rate in the US. It was like 50% maybe. Do you think
Yeah.
that all of those trends, all these things coming together are going to increase that 50%?
I read some articles that it has increased, especially during the first year of pandemic. So that was in the 2020 year. And then now it may be a bit different now, but there was definitely an upstrike or high strike of that.
Hmm.
Yes. Um, and again, I think too is that there's also more reality TV shows regarding dating.
Mm.
That's even more access to all that. I honestly found myself binging a lot of that during the pandemic.
Hmm.
So I almost felt like, wow, I feel like I'm a relationship expert just by watching of all these different ways that they're going through this. Like I think the big one was Love is Blind, which is a Netflix original,
Hmm.
right? Where it's like they
Right.
had people meet each other like with a wall in between, and they would
Ah,
then connect that way, and then they met each other in real world, and
Hmm.
then they found out that they had some challenges between the physical attractions versus like my intellectual connection. And that is just like the online realm, I felt like. And so I was really hooked on that show.
Hmm. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen that show. It's a really interesting concept.
Yeah. So I think it'll be really awesome to talk about, right, again, like today, of did we lose touch, and how can we regain that healthy connection with not just ourselves, but with others as well, especially intimately.
Hmm.
yeah, one thing I've noticed is that people were maybe not going out to therapy a lot prior to the pandemic, but I think the pandemic put people in a position where the stressors of it has forced people into therapy, forced people into marital therapy, individual treatment. And I think it's become more user friendly, I guess, and less of a stigma placed around it, like there was for so many years prior. So I think this is also an invitation for people to get into therapy in order to better their own individual selves and also their relationship with their significant other.
Oh, yes. I mean, we're busy all the time in therapy, and there's wait lists on top of, like, I guess what, months or even years for some specific ones.
Yeah, which is really different than what it was prior to the pandemic. So I think it's opened up the idea of that it's okay to go to therapy. It's okay to get help. It's okay for couples to get help. And so when you think about couples, who is it? Is it usually the male or the female, the husband or the wife? Who usually instigates marital therapy, and how do you see that going?
I think with my specific clients, I think it's been more females. And a lot of it was due to more their stance of, I want a divorce. I am not satisfied. I am not content with being maybe the stay-at-home mom or having to do more of the load at home with the children. So a lot of that impacts the relationship, especially during the pandemic time. And so I think there's just a lot of movement happening right now that is influencing traditional lifestyle.
Mhm.
Definitely with that. And then even with young adults, what are you seeing?
I think with the young adults, it was people who may have rushed into getting married during the pandemic because I think they were in that moment of, well, we're supposed to isolate ourselves. And so they chose to stay with their partner during that time, which then led to like, let's just get married and let's just have a wedding after the pandemic type of process. But then after the pandemic, now they're in this like freedom space. Then they're kind of questioning, like, am I content with my choices?
Mhm.
And that's before they even have kids. So imagine if they're already currently stressing out about the relationship or questioning it, adding stressors into it by having kids or other things. It really does put a lot of stress on the relationship.
Mhm. Do you ever see that people come into couples therapy a little bit too late, to like completely save their relationship?
I think it's part of a stigma. I think it's always I think before pandemic was couples were coming in too late.
Mhm.
They were using it as the fix it model. And it was more of one partner using it as a way to tell the other partner that you are wrong, that you need to correct your ways. And that was probably just I guess, the perspective of marriage counseling.
Mhm.
After pandemic, I'm seeing more couples coming in before that and really trying to hold on to what they have and trying to reconnect.
Yeah, I think that with the single young adults, singles or college age people, I think that it's been difficult too, where I think a lot of people are cohabitating together more and more, and that in those cohabitative relationships, still is stressful. It's still like being married. Maybe you don't have a piece of paper saying you're married, but there's still a lot of stress about that in regard of social media and whether or not, how are people managing social media. I just read an article recently about how social media has taken over, where people are sometimes, well, looking at social media all the time, and they're always on their phone, or they're on their phone during romantic times. They're on their phone, and there's people who are feeling rather lonely and disconnected. I can't remember the term they use for that. Do you remember what that is?
Was it fubbing or fuggy? Yeah, let me look it up.
Mhm.
Fubbing or something like that. So it's really kind of discounting the other person while they're trying to engage, and people feel rather discounted, feel rather alone, and don't really feel very loved or connected.
Yes, and again, if that was something that increased during the pandemic, right? This could be online gaming, online chats. And then afterwards, where it's like you don't need to rely on the online connection your partner is asking for in the moment, here and now, can we connect? And it's like it was a coping mechanism.
Mhm.
And they might be, again, like a habit where they're now more dependent on that. And so it leads into that addictive like behavior. And so, yeah, it really honestly causes a lot of dilemmas in a relationship because of that lack of connection in the moment.
Mhm. I feel like the social etiquette regarding phone and social media usage is still like developing. It's not quite there yet since the technology is so new. So do you think that it's like it could be a healthy thing to do to set boundaries as a partner, to your partner's screen time or how they spend their time on their phone around someone?
Oh, yes. I mean, being able to put aside your phones, I think we were doing that really well before the pandemic. Like when you go to dinner, you would just put your phone away or upside down. I remember doing that a lot with just friends in general. And so I think afterwards, it's like kind of like your lifeline. And so a lot of that is maybe even the lack of communication. So
Mhm.
it would be like one partner, hey, I want your attention now, even though they were just on their phones. And then they finished using their phone, and then they expect their partner to get off their phone. And
Yeah.
so it's that lack of communication and understanding, like, are you ready? Do you need 5 more minutes? Can we connect at this point type of conversation?
Mhm.
Which is, again, the expectation versus reality.
Yeah.
Some partners expect their partner to follow the same, like, I guess, their same behaviors when it comes to their boundaries, and without the actually, like, understanding their partner's connection with their phone and communicating it.
Mhm. I find it really interesting too, and how it connects with, like, you know, the different love languages that people have and like how they show affection. Because I know people who, you know, like theirs is just communication, and so just talking to someone on the phone can fulfill that for them. But there's a lot of people who need like physical touch, or like to physically be spending time with someone.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think also too, like, affirmations, being able
Mhm.
to actually have those deep, like, conversations of, hey, I'm connecting with you. This is how I feel. So there's definitely like a lack of that. And again, I think there's love languages can be, I guess, overused sometimes too.
Mhm.
That there's that one partner is like, okay, mine is only quality time, so I expect all quality time. So there's not really that, again, balance or communication with your partner on what to expect in that space.
Mhm.
How would you go about telling or helping people out with needing to communicate differently, other than just those focusing on the 5 love languages or something?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is not only on the how we communicate, but what are we communicating about? Right. Again, the how is making sure that you're not in a defense stance or attacking. You want to be in a space where you are open, you are stable to talk about the specific topic. And you also want to make sure that you are talking about things that really bother you versus the superficial behavior that you're wanting to focus on. So I think there's also that lack of understanding that you're picking at, like, oh, my partner didn't say hi to me when they come through the door,
Mhm.
or they didn't put their clothes in the hamper, or my wife is always nagging me, right? Being able to kind of, like, what is a real thing, and it's like, I don't feel like I'm getting I guess the support that I want. I'm not feeling understood, and just the empathy, the lack of empathy there.
And I think as I talk with people, a circumstance frequently comes up, and that is one partner is on their device and the other partner is feeling left out. And or they may be laughing at a joke, or they're watching a movie or whatever, and they're over there laughing amongst themselves. And the other person doesn't really feel a part of that. And so there's resentment that's created, because if you sometimes you bring it up, and then maybe that person gets reactive because they don't know why what they're doing that's wrong, or they don't understand. Or maybe they do understand a little bit, but they don't really want to change the behavior because maybe they don't want to spend time with that partner or whatever, but they're not really asserting themselves or telling the other person what they need or want. And so maybe the person who's coming into it, who's wanting more attention, they don't really want to say anything. How do you suggest that people get through stuff like that?
It's really honestly starts with, again, communication, right? Being able to, like, pull your partner aside and talk about these things, but not doing it while they're behaving in that space, but doing it in those moments when you're waking up, when you're going about to go to bed, when you just got home, not right immediately after work, but give yourself some time at dinner table. So there are moments where you already have that one-on-one opportunity. Utilize that moment to have those conversations, rather than, oh, I'm upset and I'm going to do it right now because it's bothering me in this moment, which is going to put your partner in a defense mechanism, because they're like, whoa, I don't even know what's going on. Like, why are you attacking me? Like, you're mad at me because I'm having a good time? I'm, like, confused. So it's that part where we're in that all or nothing thinking and don't really realize that you already have established a routine with your partner. You already have moments of those one-on-one. Utilize those a bit more effective so you can be productive in your conversations with your partner.
Mhm.
So
Do you think?
essentially, you're asking people to wait
Mhm.
to talk to them about that particular problem, as opposed to bringing it up in the middle of the situation.
Right. I mean, again, I think emotional regulation is very important in communication. We want to make sure that we are at least again regulated so that we are not going to instantly provide or put up our own defense mechanism. Because then if both of you are defensive, like nothing's gonna get really resolved.
And when
And
people are emotionally charged, do you have a suggestion what they can do? When they're feeling emotionally charged, they want the other person to stop and get off their phone and listen and pay attention to them. What do you suggest that they do in that moment so they're not jumping at the opportunity to get after them?
well, yeah, distracting yourself with a healthy tool, as in maybe taking a warm bath, a cool shower, even reading a good book, listening to music, or even go into your bedroom, closing the door, turn on some music, and just dance it off. Being able to just shake it off, move around, it honestly will provide a bit more of a mindset shift, and then gives you a space afterwards. Make sure you come afterwards to, okay, what was upsetting me and how do I want to approach it? So don't forget about let me think about my emotions. Don't just like distract yourself. Also be productive with your own emotions as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think another thing that's helpful with that is I statements. When you go back and approach the person that you need to talk to, is it using I statements? I feel this because of that, as opposed to you language. You're doing this, and that's you, and you this, and you that. And you should be spending time with me, and it's all your fault. Something like that just gets people very defensive. So the I language, I feel this because of that, helps the other person to know that, and hopefully working on things in therapy, or maybe people have the skills to be able to listen to that actively, and to be able to validate that emotional state without being reactive to it.
Mhm.
And I think that's a big piece of what therapy is really about, especially couple therapy, is learning how to communicate more effectively.
Yeah. And another piece is learning your family of origin. What was your first exposure to the communication styles? So when you're talking about you, who usually come to your mind, and it's like your parents, your mom specifically, maybe telling you like, hey, you need to clean your room. You need to go do this. Don't hit your brother. Don't hit your sister. Those type of
Right.
statements were very present in our childhood. So
Right.
it's natural to be really defensive when someone's coming at you, telling you that you're doing something wrong and you need to correct it. So when a partner comes with more of that I, it kind of throws you off a bit of like, okay, this is a trick. How am I supposed to like take this? But that is what we need for our partner is, uh-oh, you gotta focus.
What it does is my behavior is impacting my partner who I love, and so I
Mhm.
don't want to hurt my partner. The idea is I don't want to hurt
Correct.
my partner by recognizing that they're in hurt or upset or sadness based on my behavior. So that's
Mhm.
where modification of the behavior can take place if there's a level of empathy of your partner because you love them. But the you statement usually just creates more defensiveness that creates the
Yeah.
argument. So how to back out of that? And I think we probably need to do a podcast about how to effectively communicate with partners before, during, and after arguments, because I think there's three parts to that are sometimes I mean, sometimes the argument just continues to go forward, and people have arguments for days, weeks, months, and years, and there's really no resolution to the problem, because there's really not a focus on forgiveness. It's just a focus on blame. And
Mhm.
so it's the same with this, with social media, and people are maybe engaging in wanting to be romantic with each other, and then another person's on social media, or they're looking at movies, or they're looking at porn.
Yeah.
You talk about porn for a minute?
Yes. So again, porn isn't something that's new. It's very much been present. It has been a dilemma. But now I think with the pandemic, it has also increased the use of it. And so the fact of porn is, I think for my couples was, is it considered infidelity? And that was,
That's a hot topic right there.
yeah,
Is it considered infidelity? Yeah.
right. And
Tell us
so,
more about that.
well, I mean, I think one is you'll have two partners with different perspective on that. So therefore, it would then create conflict because they're not going to resolve because both of them are at a different space. For some, even partners hiding it. and then their partner finding out years after their marriage. So then you're kind of like, what? I thought I knew my partner, or I thought I kind of understood it. And so their pornography is definitely a bigger dilemma in relationships, as well as kind of like divorce.
I
Do
think
you think-
sometimes it does create divorce. I do think other times that there's partners who are in agreement with each other about it. But again, it's back to an open communication perspective as opposed to being sneaky. I think a
Mhm.
lot of times people are sneaky, and sometimes people will say, well, all men are sneaky. Well, what I'm finding out is that a lot of women are using pornography, as much, or maybe not as frequently, but maybe as far as usage, they're definitely using it. And sometimes it's surprising to their male partner, their husband or something, that they're surprised about that. And not all men are really happy about that, because they get jealous too. And I think that the issue of pornography is really about consent versus a position of coerciveness. And that's the problem that I find to be most frequent with hurting people, is that there was some level of manipulation or dishonesty that put people in a position where they just didn't know. And that's hurtful. That's hurtful if and when people find out.
Mhm.
And then again, another boundary too is when a partner may want to reenact a scene from a video into a bedroom without either consenting with their partner or bringing that up, because then again, that can create conflict there. So I think again, that's that influence of social media, is bringing something that I've seen and how do I add that into my life. Again, goes back to just normal social media like Facebook or Instagram. You see a happy family, a happy partner, they're on a vacation, they're doing these great things with their kiddos. You tend to kind of be like, wait a second, let me reflect on my life. And right there is already creating a dilemma or a conflict into your relationship, because you invited something in that really doesn't have or should have an effect on
Mhm.
where you're at.
Even those families that do post, like the perfect family influencer, those kind of accounts, do you think that that creates like a negative expectation reality situation for like themselves?
Yes, because you use that word perfect, right? Perfect has its own own issues with that. And so as soon as you see something, you're going to have your own reaction. And if you label that as perfect, again, that is you creating more conflict with yourself. And that goes back to your childhood, maybe, or whatnot. You're like, what does perfect mean to me? What am I missing in my life? Then goes back to that loneliness or the sadness of loss. And again, I think that happens to individuals too, when they see people with partners or families, and like, I don't have a partner, I don't have kids, I don't have a sense of purpose. And so it also can create dilemmas with yourself if you're looking at other people's posts as like, how come I don't have that?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that's the whole issue with social media in general, is that it creates that emotional feeling of I am less than, I'm worth less if I'm not competing. And I think that has just created a spiral effect. I mean, everything is coming out of, well, not everything out of Hollywood, but a lot of things out of Hollywood, really creates a lot of people to believe that they're less than. Even, we have body dysphoria, where people are, modifying their body in order to be able to be like someone else, because people are not happy and satisfied in their own lives. And so I'm curious about how are you helping people become more satisfied with who they are and where they're at today, as opposed to trying to be what someone else thinks they should be, or what they think they should be is different.
Well, it really starts with a client being motivated to recognize that for themselves, that I feel insecure, I'm at the space, dark space. Once a client's able to recognize that, then we can actually work towards of like, how do we understand what that looks like or what that means for you? And so it can be a slow process, but that's because you're really taking time for yourself to really reflect on what is you and what's not. And so being able to focus on yourself, self-care, advocate for yourself, understand your behaviors, what your triggers are, is vital into understanding how my mind perceives things.
I
And
think it's
so,
hard because it's people are tripped up just because they're only aware of their own thoughts.
mhm,
And there's a rumination around I shoulda, woulda, coulda
oh,
about body, about, especially for women. I'm not a woman, but I've talked to a bunch. Um, married anyway, but it's really about how things are supposed to be and how my life is not what it should be or should have been. And what I planned it to be, or how come I'm not good enough, or I feel inadequate, so inadequate, worthless on the inside, which is really a statement of shame. Shame is a feeling of I am not good enough. And so a lot of times women will present that with perfectionism, and then they're trying to focus on that perfectionism, which ultimately is a distraction and addiction to be able to self-soothe their suffering of loneliness, feelings of abandonment, rejection. And so there's a process to be able to help people to feel more connected, and ideally to their partner. And that is where we're coming back to, because everybody's wanting to use the device. And I say that the device is divisive when it comes to relationships. So the device is there to create a barrier in between you and your partner. And then people are feeling upset about that. And so how can we get more connected? How can we feel more in love with each other, and more attached to each other? And if we can figure that out, then guess what? People don't come into therapy, but when people are feeling rather disconnected, they find addictions as a way to be able to, stay distracted from feeling so hopeless, helpless, and worthless. And so we got to figure out what the balance is. How can we figure that out? And in my mind, it's about putting it down more frequently. We're not going to have it, but we're going to put it down more frequently and spend connective time with each other. So that may be date night, that may be, intimacy, but what does that look like? And for a lot of people, they're having to schedule it more frequently now than previously, based on that our lives are pretty busy or whatever. But it's hard to be able to get both partners to agree to put this divisive, down.
oh yeah. I think that's the biggest part that we, I guess, establish for the beginning of therapy is to talk about boundaries. How much are you importing quality time into your one-on-ones? And not only are you putting devices down, but also what type of activities can I do that you cannot use your phone? So maybe dinner time is actually not a good distraction because it's right there. You can feel it. It's just a habit. So being able to go on walks, right? I'll be able to kind of like go swimming, like doing like working out, do some, well, actually working out is different now because people record themselves. So I actually take that away. So even there, I have struggles because when I go to my go-to, I'm like, wait a second, there is such a huge impact of social media and phones now that I don't know if I can go somewhere without a phone being present. So like I said, going on walks or hiking or going swimming, like those are moments where you know your phone can't be brought. So be creative. We got to start thinking outside of the box because our world is no longer what it used to be before 2020. So we have to kind of adapt to the world that's being present, and we just got to be more creative. And I
Yeah,
think
I think
that's,
it's
yeah.
like the issue, even going swimming or going to work out, everybody wants to videotape themselves or video themselves so they can post it somewhere, and to be able to brag or say this is what I did or what I'm doing. And they're always thinking about someone else in the relationship. So the relationship is not just between two people, it's between two
The
people
world.
plus
Mhm.
whoever they're posting to, or whoever the attention they're trying to gain from. And I think that splintering creates a lot of anxiety.
Mhm.
Okay, mental health is exploding right now, and I think it'll continue to explode primarily because of that. Because people are not focusing on their partner one-on-one; they're thinking about all the other people, their friends, and whatever. Or they want to be an influencer; they want to influence other people, or they already
Mhm.
are. And so they're always thinking about other people other than themselves, and also other than the person that they're wanting to be connected to
Mhm.
in
Right.
the relationship.
Same thing goes to dating app. Is that you would focus on what the other person have. Oh wow, that's great. I want a partner like that. But you're not actually thinking about who you are and what you need to have a successful relationship. And that's that part that distances a lot of my individuals who are like, how come I'm not good enough for this specific person? How come I'm not happy? And it's like, well, you're not really taking the time to figure out who you are and what type of relationship you want. And so that again, it's that the avoidant
Mhm.
behavior of not trying to really think about who you are.
Yeah. I
And a lot
guess,
of individual counseling, I mean, a lot of counseling naturally is going to go to that stance,
mhm,
really taking the time to understand who you are.
mhm. Something I thought about a lot too when you mentioned, Chris, that, people want to videotape every single thing that they do with their partner, every activity they go on. I think there's also a flip side of that where there are a lot of people that get insecure when their partners don't want to videotape everything they're doing or post, that they're doing partner activities together. What's your opinion on that, on some people finding importance in being posted on someone's social media?
Maria, you can tackle that. I have thoughts, but go ahead.
Again, it's the avoidance or your own like lack of. So you're trying to fill that void and you're questioning, like, am I not good enough for him to post me? Why is he not, putting me out there or putting our relationship out there? I want those likes. I want followers. I want to be an influenced person. And that goes back to where I feel insecure. I don't feel like I'm important. And so you kind of
Right.
have to like see that it's the person's reaction with themselves that creates a conflict into what they see or with their partner.
So if I'm really important, you're going to be posting about me and all the activities that we're doing, because that gives me influence, that gives me likes. And for that moment, I get a dopamine hit. Every like I get a dopamine, a spike. Oh, I got, I feel good. But that dopamine reaction only lasts for maybe 5 minutes. And then you're going back to feeling miserable. So we need to get another hit. We need to get another hit. And get another hit. And all of this is really focused around pleasure hormones within inside of our minds, brains. So, and the thing is, when people only feel validated by someone posting about them or being a part of a post, again, it's part of that splintering of who you are as an individual, and how to have a more loving, connected relationship is really between two people, not three and not 50,000 or whatever. I mean, it just doesn't make a whole lot of a possibility. And you're not always going to be liked and loved by everyone all the time. A lot of times people make a demand: I must be liked and loved by everyone who's important to me. If it's going to be 2 people or 5,000 people or whatever, it's not possible to always be important. It's not possible always to be present in everybody's lives all the time to get all of that attention, because there's a dopamine spike, and then there's a dopamine depletion when there's another person is not around to get that validation. And so people and their emotions are going like this. So they're really anxious and really depressed, and then they're really high and they're really happy, and then they're really anxious and depressed and high and happy. And what does that do? I mean, how do people live in that space where they're up and down, up and down, up and down, as opposed to having stability? And then stability is rolling hills as opposed to these spiky emotions. But that happens with an interpersonal relationship in between two people, as opposed to 5,000 people. Having to splinter oneself out for all these other people as opposed to the partner you're with. And so really, if people are going to find happiness in this life, it's really about having an interpersonal loving connection with one other person, really. And that's what the whole dating idea is about. It's not just about, most people want to focus so much on sexuality, and that is the only way of having a greater relationship is having a lot of sexuality. It seems like a lot of young men are really wanting more sexuality off social media than they are having relationships. And a lot of young women want to have relationships, and they want to slow down sexuality. And there's a lot of conflict with, I think, college age people plus around that topic. So there's, and I think that's another podcast we really need to talk about, because I think it's really a complicated situation for young people. But the simplicity of it is that it doesn't work. It doesn't work. If it really worked, it would go along with our biology, and we'd be all happy about, one option or another. But the reality is it's not working, because it's creating the emotions of anger, anxiety, depression, suicidality, or other unhealthy emotions, even, chemical addiction and so forth. People are constantly distracting themselves from feeling these negative emotional states that they don't want to have in their life, but they really want to have, and are pining to have connection, pining to have closeness. planning to have be a part of a team of family who really love and care about them, as opposed to our focus on all of this distraction that doesn't work. Bottom line, doesn't work. And so I think that helping people get into therapy, or at least looking at therapy to be able to establish the boundaries, what's going to be a healthy boundary versus what's not going to be an unhealthy boundary. What does that look like? And how to be able to determine that is based on values. What is a person's values? What do you want in your life? And then only allow those people in your life that are in the scope of those values. And if they're outside the scope of those values, they can't be in your life. That's just the bottom line. And so if we because the thing is, if we keep on opening ourselves up to, well, I have to be friends with everybody, I have to be liked by everyone, I have to have 5,000 or 50,000 followers in order for me to find happiness in my life, that's just not possible. It's not possible. It's possible in interpersonal relationship with a loving partner. That's the key, is we got to find the interpersonal relationship with a loving partner who is in the values scope of what we want and what we need in our life, as opposed to what everybody else says that we should have in our life. Because if all of that worked, everybody would be super happy. But the bottom line, it's not working based on the level of unhappiness that is happening in the world, and especially with young adults who are going through the process of courtship or dating or whatever the case may be. And also married couples. I mean, it's all across the board. And so how to be really focusing and primarily into that loving, connective, one-on-one relationship. And that is really where happiness and joy and peace of mind come from, is having that opportunity for that loving connection, not all of this other stuff. Because all the other stuff is creating therapy to be exploding all over the United States, all over the world. It's just not working.
Yeah. Well, essentially what you're saying is it's going to require work. And that is usually what I advocate when I see my clients, is that it's going to take a lot of work. And again, expectation versus reality with the social world is instant gratification is not going to be present in the reality. So because we're so attached and codependent probably on social media, we got to recognize that like what we do in our day-to-day, we're not going to get that instant gratification.
You're not always going to feel good.
Yes, it's not. And so it's that work, that time and effort that you put in on yourself is going to show. And if it doesn't work with that relationship, you're going to be in a different space afterwards. And then you're going to be in a better place, kind of like what Chris mentioned about values, and understand that to what is it that I need to support that, rather than fill that void.
With anything that shows up.
Mhm.
Usually people take whatever shows up as opposed to going after what they really want.
Mhm.
People will spend more time buying a car than learning how to go on a date.
Right.
It's really true. Our culture and society says whoever looks good in front of you, go for it. As opposed to, oh, what do I really want? What options of the car do I want? What color do I want? You know, what is this? What is it? What kind of vehicle is it going to be? It's going to be a 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive.
What extra features are they going to add to it? Like,
yeah, what's it going to be?
Mm-hmm.
People don't think about their relationships that way, but they put more time and effort in buying a car than they put into figuring out what they want to go out with. So, and the outcomes of that are create mental health to be busy, and our divorce rates are high, and we have a lot of single parents, and we have a lot of complicated lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the result, you're going to have, you're essentially building the next generation.
I know too. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry if I interrupted.
You're good.
I was just going to say, I know that we go back to loneliness a lot. It seems like a lot of the issues, especially a lot of these relationship issues, stem from this loneliness that people feel. Do either of you have any recommendations for how to fill that feeling in a healthy way that's not depending on a relationship?
A big tool that I use with my clients is the power of affirmations. I have my clients utilize that daily. Put that into your morning routine, because I believe everybody has a morning routine, right? And so might as well add some value into it. And so adding power affirmations there, and then even doing it at bedtime. These affirmations are essentially a statement that are positive. And you, again, neuroplasticity, right? You're trying to mold that brain of yours into a place of, wow, I can see myself being enough. I am valued, I have a space for myself, and I can change. And that takes a lot of courage to say that to yourself. And so again, I'm really big on affirmations adding into my clients' work.
Yeah, I think affirmations are hard for a lot of people because they were not taught from childhood that they had value. And so people are not used to being kind to themselves by using affirmations. And so it's really about breaking through the belief that that's a lie if you're telling something positive to yourself, because it goes against all the indoctrination of culture, high school, being bullied, or whatever things happen during our youth. So there's a belief, this negative chatterbox, where it comes and stems from a lot of that indoctrination that took place. So to undo that with the brain neuroplasticity idea is first thing in the morning, midday, before you go to bed, 50 times out loud, preferably, is to be able to say these things strongly, forcefully, about how you want to feel. And so my top 3 that I use is I don't like it. That's okay. I can stand it anyway. That's increasing frustration tolerance when a person is being alone. You may be in college and you have goals and dreams you're going after. Maybe the right person isn't showing up. Is I can handle this. I can handle this. I'm going to be okay. I don't like it, but that's okay. I can stand it anyway. And so you're saying it to yourself out loud 50 times first thing in the morning, 50 times midday somewhere, and 50 times before you go to bed. And the reason why is because it'll start to change the neural network inside of your brain from the belief of I cannot have to the belief is I'm okay. And that takes place over the course of about 3 weeks. So plasticity takes 3 weeks to develop a habit. So it's a daily practice. Every time you get in the car, every time you're alone somewhere, is to be able to say these affirmations to yourself in order to be able to change how you feel. And so usually the first 8 or 10 times you say it, it's like you don't believe it. The next 10 times you say it yourself, you start to moderate. And guess what? The last 10 or 12 times, I really believe it and I feel better. I feel better. And the reason why is because it's hitting new neurons inside of the brain that create a feeling of feeling okay, with serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, as a way to be able to help us to feel okay. So I don't like it. That's okay. I can stand it anyway is a really good thing to say to oneself when you're in the midst of situations that are very frustrating. Another one, the second one that I use frequently is I cannot be liked and loved by everyone all the time. It's a demand that most people demand. You must like and love me all the time, otherwise I'm worthless. But that's not real, because we can't like and love everyone else all of the time. So first thing in the morning, midday, before you go to bed, is I cannot be liked and loved by everyone all the time. And I'm okay. I'm okay. I've got this. I cannot be liked and loved by everyone all the time. I'm okay. I got this. I cannot be liked and loved by everyone all the time. I'm okay. I got this. Again, it's another 30 times first thing in the morning, midday, before you go to bed, and you start to feel better. And it starts to put your mind in a position to start to see that you're really okay. All right. Another one that I use is that something in my past, which was once important to me, won't always be important to me, i.e. past ugly relationships. That may be mom and dad, siblings, bullies at school, past romantic relationship, or whatever. Is that something in my past, which was once important to me, will not always be important to me, and I choose to let it go. I let it go, I let it go, I let it go, I let it go, I let it go. And we're tapping maybe on ourselves wherever we feel this, because it starts to activate our bodies, where we start to feel emotions inside of our stomach, our chest, our throat. And so if we tap on that as we say these things to ourselves, it creates that feeling to go away faster. I don't like it. That's okay. I can stand it anyway. I can't be liked and loved by everyone all the time. And something in my past, which was once important to me, will not always be important to me. So you only pick one of those and you say it to yourself 30 times first thing in the morning, midday, before you go to bed. The neuroplasticity takes place. And after a couple of days, usually what people tell me is that I feel better. I'm not as reactive as I used to be. I used to demand my husband or my wife pay attention to me all the time. Now I just recognize it's okay. I recognize it's okay. So that's a good skill to use with that. Another aspect of that is gratitude, offering gratitude about what you're grateful for. This is very important. So the affirmation for that is, I am so happy and I am so grateful for this. I'm so happy and I'm so grateful for. I'm so happy and I'm so grateful for. And remind yourself over and over and over. Again, as the first thing in the morning, midday before you go to bed, 30 times, is that what you're happy and what you're grateful for is what you're going to find. So if you're happy and grateful for a healthy, valid, loving relationship, is that your mind will go into overdrive to look for a happy, valid relationship, a particular person that you're looking for. So it's, for example, if I say, think about a white elephant. I mean, it puts the idea inside of your mind. Oh, well, that's what a white elephant is. Well, if you keep on telling yourself, I'm looking for a white elephant, no matter what, wherever you go, every white object that you see, it's gonna come to your awareness. So it's the same thing with this idea, is that you're putting these ideas inside of your mind of specifically what you're looking for and what you want to have within the scope of those values we talked about a bit ago. And if you do that enough over and over and over, what you seek is what you will find, because that's what you're aware of. That's what you choose to be aware of, as opposed to choosing to be aware of anger, anxiety, and depression. Most people are aware of anger, anxiety, and depression because that's what they were socialized to believe is all that exists. But there's more things that exist, and there's a place called peace, joy, and happiness, which, by the way, is more fun, because that's, if you focus on peace, joy, and happiness, your brain will automatically find it. Your brain will find what you put inside of your mind that is a possibility for yourself. So I think when it comes to social media, it comes to relationships, is to be able to affirm to ourselves. And that creates ourselves to have a higher sense of self-esteem, that we love ourselves more, and that we're kinder to ourselves, as opposed to shredding ourselves of inadequacy and looking for outside things in order to be able to help us to feel better. But those outside things are just addictions. It's just picking up a liquor or methamphetamine. I mean, that's not literally that, but it's social media. It's the distraction of the moment, as opposed to being present in the moment and really coming to terms that you're okay, that you can stand it, and that it's all right. I went off, but I think it's important stuff as far as affirmations and gratitude.
Yes.
In order to be able to find happiness, as opposed to I shoulda, coulda, woulda, as opposed to it's you, and you. It's all your fault that I'm not happy, or that I've got to find another distraction as a way to be able to keep myself calmed down. It's essentially, the distraction is a disassociation from reality. So if people are disassociated from reality, they don't have to deal with reality. Well, that creates a lot of anger, anxiety, and depression. So in order to find peace, joy, and happiness, is to learn how to live in reality and learn how to live in now.
Yeah. And with all that, show yourself grace.
Absolutely.
Give yourself, leniency. Like, be kind to yourself through this process. It is hard. We've been through a lot, right? And we have our own story, our own experience, and we just need to make sure that we value ourselves in this process. So again, grace yourself with your presence, and you'll just see a lot of changes once you do that.
Yep. And grace is forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness of yourself and forgiveness of others. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thing you want to get off your chest, Maria? Any last statements?
Come to counseling. It's amazing. It's fun. It's honestly changes stigma. It's not all bad. It is great work. And again, you're valuing yourself by coming to counseling.
All right. And our little advertisement is that Maria works for Christopher L. Walton and Associates, as does Caroline. And so we are putting our podcast together in order to be able to educate people about how to navigate their mind to achieve a life of peace, joy, and happiness, which is the title of my book. And that's what we are trying to promote within our practice, is how to be able to help people get to a better place in their life and breaking away from those things that are creating them to be and feel miserable. So we appreciate that. And our phone number is 208-403-0135. And we're located in Idaho Falls, Idaho.